right, now we're here at Gallus Dungal, 10-15 feet from where Coppa Hembo was born. Now, a lot of people would call our local Indians ignorant because their arrowheads didn't make sense. We found out what that actually is. The local tribesmen used these very, very small arrowheads, and everybody called them bird points for the longest time. Why would you go to this much effort to make a small arrowhead for a bird? Well, they didn't take into context what it had. Now, this is a very old arrow. It's not an original, but it shows bird point technology, one way that it was done. And this is probably the more common way. The primary arrow shaft, and then you have the bird point attached to this small foreshaft that actually inserts into this. So this goes into the animal, this stays in, and this part detaches. You pick it up, and you have another one of these, and you insert it, reload it. Because it takes a lot of time to fletch a nice arrow, Abbott. If you were right-handed, you used the wing feathers of a left wing of the bird. And if you're left-handed, you use the right wing feathers, because the helical twist on the wing feathers is different from the left wing versus the right wing, and when you release the arrow, you want it to rotate away from the bow. Whereas if you are left-handed, you want it to rotate away from the bow. So these are actually very scientifically set up. There's a lot of thought going into this. Now, here's the trick to these bird points that we figured these ignorant Indians were doing for so long. Now, my Osage ancestors, my grandfather's tribe was Osage, not local Hill Nisenen. They used these. And this is comparable to the arrowhead that you'd find for the Germans, the British, the Chinese, the Sioux, everybody else, including Ishi, the last of the Ahi. This is a representative. These are not original. These are all reproduction. This is their style of arrowhead. It's got basically the same cutting width, because for us to bring down an animal, you had to drive the arrow into the lungs, and you killed with a hemorrhagic wound. This was why the Osage bow, sinew-backed with Osage orange, is one of the most powerful. You'll probably see a picture now of a pandak style or flat bow. These were not very powerful. Matter of fact, a child could pull them back, and everybody assumed the local tribesmen, the Digger Indians, they must be ignorant. Why? They must not be real men. They're not strong. No. No, those hanging clumps of spiders, one of the group that we call Daddy Longlegs, sometime around 1,400 years ago, some Native American biochemist, call him a witch doctor if you want, figured out how to extract and refine the neurotoxin from those spiders. We don't know how they did that. Now, this came to my attention. I was working at the Institute of Forest Genetics. We were developing insect pheromones to reduce bark beetle mortality, working with a lot of entomologists. And one of them got an interesting job, and he was talking about it at lunch. He said that the arrowheads in some of their collections were covered with a residue, and they found out it was a neurotoxin. Some arrow that's been in a museum for 200 years, if you get that up under your skin, within 6 minutes, you'll be assuming room temperature. It's that hot, still today. And the question was, well, what is it? So they began to analyze the residue on the arrows. Well, I'm fascinated by this. I was curious as a pet raccoon every lunch that he was up there talking. He found out it was from this particular variety of the daddy long-legged spiders. But what fascinated the most was that it was enzyme-based. And somehow, these ignorant witch doctors, them Digger Indians, had figured out how to stabilize an enzyme-based neurotoxin such that it's still this effective 200 years later. The medical applications for that technology would be worth a fortune. So now, where for all these, 150 years or more, them ignorant witch doctors, now it's they're just curious as anything. What could they have used to not only the extraction and the refining of the neurotoxin, which blows my mind, but what did they use to produce, and what process did they use to stabilize this enzyme-based neurotoxin? That is what is a great deal of effort and research. Unfortunately, it appears that technology is lost, but when you're looking here, it is not what you were seeing if you were sitting here when Coppa Hembo was born, when Hajipe and her people were here. I have to put this into it. Let me get that next. But this is how you could mount them, this way or this way. And the idea was, where my ancestor would come up and try to kill a grizzly bear and have to drive this through the hide, through the cartilaginous sheath, between the ribs, and get it in far enough that an animal with a very slow metabolism doesn't, even though he's dead, he could still come up and rip you to shreds and say, oh my goodness, I guess I'm dead. And he's going to be mad at you because he's going to know that you hit him. With these arrows and very light force bows, you wait until that grizzly bear is in the berry bushes and you poke him in the rump. He thinks he just got scratched. And 6 minutes later, you can go over and start skinning him out. It's highly developed technology, and it's specific to a region in which you are plagued with some of the largest carnivores on earth. The California grizzlies rival and possibly even exceeded, in certain parts of California, the Kodiak brown bears because of the high food intake and what they've got available. Their specific subspecies could get that big. Not necessarily here, but they're still a pretty ill-tempered animal that you have to deal with. These are a result of that. And while they found these in the thighs of elk and grizzly bears and stuff, they thought, well, it looks like a .22. Why would you use this to kill such a big and dangerous animal? They didn't know what the technology was behind it until only a few years ago. This is why they were using these. Now, when I say we want to find out what did they use, right now you see this terrible stuff. This is star thistle. This is from Kazakhstan. This is not indigenous. The green grass that you see in around here was not here at the time. This grass will all turn yellow. If you're familiar, Gold Hill. When Coppa Hembo was born, Gold Hill was not golden in the summertime. It was green. It was covered with 3 different species of bunch grass. And in here, along this creek, we know that there were at least 2 species of bunch grass, which both the Hill Nisenen and Washoe people had developed. They had domesticated it to the point that, much like wheat, you would take the seeds off this bunch grass and you could get the chaff off. There are some things that we perhaps will show on the program I have of the baskets that were designed to thrash it, to remove the chaff, and then you had wheat. And we've now realized that with the coming of the miners and the mules, and they're in here eating the stuff, and the European grass is taking place of it, the bunch grass stays green year-round. So in the middle of the summertime, it's the only thing for a cow or a sheep or a horse to eat. They ate them out of existence in large extent, plus which you have to harvest the seed, and you have to prep the soil and replant. They are domesticated, and we now have found Walker Lake, the Paiute, had 3 different species of grass there that are of commercial value if we can bring them back. The seeds will no longer germinate, but we have enough genetic material, enough DNA, to put that into its wild ancestor and hopefully bring the species back because it's so drought resistant, drought tolerant, and it is endemic to the soils in that area. So while the miners showed up and they figured these were ignorant Indians, they didn't practice agriculture, no, you had your own wheat growing in here, which you had to cultivate. And this was here. But as it wasn't planted in neat rows particularly, it wasn't something that the Europeans recognized as being a crop. But this was also growing here. There's a lot of reasons why they're living here and what they were doing. The technology that they had, it becomes much more understandable, a very sophisticated culture that is endemic to this region. And you're not dealing with ignorant people. As a matter of fact, they are close to the edge. you can have a bad year or something, there's no great reserve of groceries. You could store acorns for up to 3 years before they would go bad. The big problem was keeping the grizzly bears out of your acorn storage facilities. A bear comes in and tears that stuff up, you have to live off the land. You want to have this as prepared as possible. If you are lazy or stupid, there's no room in a society such as this. They didn't live. The people, we give it that they're ignorant for being in the Stone Age. Well, there's no iron or copper deposits in this region. But we have that they were actually biochemical technicians, scientists. They're able to derive neurotoxins and work up a great deal of technology we now realize that they possessed. Any group of people has highly intelligent individuals. The indigent that you see at the side of the road is not really a good representation of any society or group of people. They had developed some tremendous technologies and agriculture that we're only now beginning to realize and bring it out to the public to appreciate. That when these people came and dealt with them, you're dealing with some highly intelligent individuals, very motivated, and through probably genetic selection, they're coming in at the top of the IQ chart. They may not have gone to Harvard, but as a student of nature, they're right up there. They are finding out things that even today, we now know they could do it, but we can't replicate it. This is some of the fascination that I think you'll share with us, and I hope that you'll tune in on a future Nuggets of History here in El Dorado County.